My job is to work with communities in 8 counties around substance abuse prevention. That's part of my job. It pertains to what you're doing this video about. And what we do is we work with groups in these different communities, as I said, in 8 counties. And those groups typically represent people from schools and law enforcement, maybe churches, other agencies that work with young people and families. And they're all concerned about substance abuse issues. A lot of times people ask me, why do young people start using drugs? And there's no there's not a simple answer to that. But a lot of times it's because they have a perception that somehow it's not going to hurt them. They've probably heard the warnings about drug use and sometimes know well the dangers, but yet they still choose to do that. I think sometimes it's because they're spending time with maybe older kids or maybe even kids their age that are already experimenting with alcohol or marijuana or even some other substance, and so that influences them to use. And you know, that's one of the reasons sometimes I think people do it, because they have this perception that everybody's doing that, and they think that that's just something okay for them to do because of this misperception that everybody's doing that. And the truth is, not everybody's doing that. In fact, the minority is the people that are doing that. Okay, so some people use marijuana, for instance, because they believe that it's natural, it can't hurt them. I sometimes hear the excuse, well, nobody's ever died from marijuana, which I'm not so sure that's true. But what marijuana does, obviously, it's a little bit like alcohol in that it affects your motor skills, affects your ability to think clearly when you're under the influence. So, you know, we have people that get in car crashes that are under the influence of marijuana because they're not driving correctly and they get in crashes and those types of things. So, you know, the idea that nobody ever gets hurt from it. People make bad choices when they're under the influence of marijuana, just like they might make bad choices and get hurt or be in car crashes and things like that when they're under the influence of alcohol. So in that sense, yes, people can get hurt from its use. And then some people ask me, well, it's not addictive. Well, what I can tell you the research says is that 2 of every 5 regular users of marijuana, people who are regular users, let's call them weekly users of marijuana, 2 of every 5 become addicted. So that's about 40%, 4 out of 10, 2 out of 5. So yeah, for some people it is addictive. And in fact, we keep statistics of people that seek drug treatment, people who go to a treatment program and ask for help. And just in Phelps County, again, Phelps County where we all live, go to school, and work, well over 100 people in 1 year, in a recent year, sought treatment and said marijuana was the drug that they were addicted to. So these are people that are voluntarily going to treatment and admitting that marijuana was the drug of which they were addicted. So it might not be addictive for everybody, I suppose, but it certainly can be an addictive substance. What else does marijuana do to you? Well, a lot of people, it affects their motivation. Not motivated, you know, for instance, a young person motivated to do their schoolwork, maybe not motivated to go to work if they have a job, lose a little motivation of getting up in the morning to go to school. Typically a young person who's using a lot of marijuana, their grades fall because of those very things. It's hard for them to keep a job sometimes. And again, just making bad decisions. There are some long-term studies that have shown some deficits in memory from ongoing marijuana use, as well as some deficits in brain functioning. So, for lack of a better term, the fact that some people say smoking marijuana can make you stupid, well, there actually is some research behind that. I don't tell people that because I don't think that's an appropriate way of saying that, but if you've heard somebody say that, the fact is the research would back that up in a lot of cases. So I want to tell you a little bit about what happens to people who use alcohol or other drugs if they continue to use it on a regular basis. Typically when somebody uses a mind-altering substance, and that a mind-altering substance would be alcohol, would be marijuana, just about any of those drugs that are out there, okay? What happens is they use it the first time and they go, oh, this feels pretty good, I like this, right? And so they say, well, I'm going to try this again sometime. And so that next time comes around, maybe with friends, maybe with others, and they have access to it, and they use it again. Oh, yeah, this feels good. I like this. Okay, and so they get this high, if you will. All right, that's the term we often hear. But then, as that regular use continues, it starts taking a little more to get that same high. Okay, so they have to increase how much they use, how much they drink if it's alcohol, or how much they smoke if it's marijuana. So it takes more, and that means their body is starting to get used to it a little bit. They're starting to develop what we call a tolerance. All right, so it's taking more. All right, but still yet when they use, oh, this feels good. I like this. Okay, but now another thing that happens during that time is when they use, yeah, it feels good. They get that high. Okay, but when they're not using, they don't come back to normal. Okay, where you and I are most of the time. When they're not using, they don't feel quite as normal. Okay, and so they use, feels good. Not quite as good as it did before. Got to use some more to get there. But when they don't use, now they're not feeling even close to normal. Okay, and this is the brain chemistry is changing. All right, their body is changing, the tolerance has changed, it's starting to affect the chemistry, the chemicals in their brain, chemicals that help you feel okay, feel normal, that type of thing. And so what we see in a significant addict is they're not using anymore necessarily to get that high. They're using because they feel so bad when they're not using. They're using just trying to feel normal again. Okay? And that's the sad and very ironic thing about addiction is that the true addict, and you see this on television shows if you've watched A&E Intervention, and you've seen those serious addicts who are stealing things to use, are stealing their parents' money, or stealing a friend's car, or whatever else, just to be able to pay for their habits, their drug habits. They need that because they feel so terrible when they're not using. They feel like the worst flu you've ever had. That's how they feel when they're not using. And so they're using just trying to feel good again, to feel normal, if you will. I can tell you, of all the people I've talked to with drug problems, not one of them ever started using because they wanted to become an addict. No one ever intends to become an addict. But the other thing I can tell you is most everybody I've also talked to said that were addicted say to me, I never thought this would happen to me. So we have that sense that, well, addiction just happens to others. It can happen to anybody. I think some young people struggle with how do I stay away from it? How do I avoid using? How do I deal with it if my friends are using? And I always tell people that you can be the leader. You don't have to be a follower. You don't have to do something just because somebody else is doing it. You can be the person that says, no, I don't want to do that. Let's go do this instead. Let's go play basketball. Let's go ride bikes to the center, or let's do something different instead of that behavior that is not a healthy choice. And probably you can help your friends that way because you can pull them out of that situation. Again, if they're doing it, they're probably doing it because somebody else is doing it. And if you pull them out, you've given them a reason not to do it as well. So I always encourage people, be the leader, be the one that says, no, I don't want to do that, and I really don't want you to do that, let's go do this instead. The other thing I tell people is one of the risk factors for using, one of the 4 primary risk factors for using and leading to addiction is hanging out with people that are doing drugs or alcohol. So sometimes you have to literally change your friends. You have to make new friends. You have to go different places. You have to hang out in different locations and go and avoid those that you know have made those bad choices. And that's a lot of times what happens. People get to junior high and high school, you know, some of those friends they had in elementary school or middle school are making some bad choices, and you literally have to change your circle of friends, develop some new friends. So that's a big part of it too. I think that another thing is just knowing who you want to be. You know, do you want to be that person that's using, it affects your grades, it affects your ability to get along with others, it affects your relationships with your family? Is that who you want to be? Or do you want to be the other person who is healthy and strong and doing their best in sports and in school and in relationships? It's really a matter of what you want to do and what your goals are and where you want to take your life. So those are all things to think about and things to consider when we talk about how do we avoid using. Again, be part of the majority. The majority is not using. I think another mistake that's made sometime by people that begin using is somebody gives them, let's say, marijuana or maybe even a prescription drug or what we call synthetic drugs, which are man-made chemicals turned into drugs in some way. And they think this person's being nice to them, that's offering them this drug. And unfortunately, a lot of times what happens is they're offering it to you because they want you to become addicted to it so that they can later sell it to you because you'll want it because of that addiction. So people out there that are offering drugs to others are often just trying to develop customers, whether that's a customer because they like it and they want more of it, or a customer which eventually turns into a customer who's addicted and needs it to feel okay. But those people aren't being nice that are giving you stuff. They're looking for customers. They're looking for a place to make money so that they can buy more drugs for themselves.